We are starting at 6:02. The meeting of the WSESD board will come to order. This meeting is a remote meeting, which means that it's a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely. And my goodness, I'm using the wrong statement. So if you will give me just a moment, I will jump to the language that, okay. The meeting of the WSESD will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely, and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and to participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. Okay. Thank you very much, Deborah. So are there any agenda changes that anyone would like to address or read?
The only one I had was just to be able to appoint Tim to the Social Justice Committee.
Oh.
Okay, so we can add that to the, under the board subcommittee updates, we can add Social Justice Committee addition. Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else, then we will move along. Okay, so student matters, that's the first thing on the agenda. So we will see, are there any students in the Zoom who would like to, questions, comments, thoughts for the board? Okay, I'm not hearing that there are any, so I'm going to ask a second time. Are there any students who would like to bring anything to the board? And not hearing, I'm going to ask a third time before we move on. Okay, thank you. So we will move on along to the clerk's report. The approval of the minutes for June 13, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'd like to amend the minutes.
Okay, so are you making a motion to approve?
No.
Approve the minutes so that we can get to the amending?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah. Okay, so Deborah has made a motion to approve the minutes. Is there any,
Discussion at this point.
Discussion.
Right. Discussion, yeah. So a motion to amend the minutes for page 1 under call to order. It indicates a motion by DS to postpone letter I under new business, and it actually should be to postpone letter H under new business, not I. H is climate survey report, Chris Overtree proposal, and that is what has been postponed until later this summer.
okay, so Deborah has made a motion to amend the minutes. All those is,
Just changing the letter I to H.
Letter I to H, that's correct.
is
Eva
there,
has a hand up. Eva has a hand up.
Eva?
But, sorry, it's just saying aye.
Oh, that's
Say
Okay.
aye.
So you got ahead of us, so all those in favor of amending the minutes to change the letter I to the letter H, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, now we are on to, are there any other amendments to the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the approving the minutes of June 13, 2023 with the amendment that has been approved, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very
Madam
much.
Chair, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt. I've got someone apparently in the waiting room. The name is XXXXXXX, and there looks like a John Lennon picture. Where are we at in terms of?
Is it a picture that we may have seen before?
No, it just looks like a portrait of John Lennon, like the Beatle.
Can you communicate with people in the waiting room?
I don't think so. I check.
Are you asking if you should let them into the meeting?
Yes, that's the question.
I'm thinking that we allow people to put lots of other pictures up as their as a representation of them. I would be open to them being let in, just as, and then if someone is acting in a way that is not appropriate, then we could certainly address that. I'm not sure how we could justify, but I before you do that, Sean had something that he.
Yeah, I go to the Guilford Select Board meetings and I watch them on BCTV. And you have to have your first and your last.
Excuse me. Could I interject? I'm sorry.
Just a moment, please.
You have to have your first and your last name in order to be accepted to the meeting virtually. And that's just, I think it's standard protocol. So since John Lennon is deceased, I think that the person should probably not be admitted. Unless they want
I
to
don't know
change
how to.
the
There we go.
anchor, the handle.
Okay. Mindy, did you have something you thought might be helpful?
I'm sorry. I just didn't know how to raise my hand. And I wanted to say that there are some people who might want to attend anonymously for valid reasons. And I hope that you'll take that into account.
Yeah, I just didn't want any surprises. So I'm going to go ahead and.
Finger on the eject from meeting button.
Yes.
So, Paul, I guess I can address that person as they come in.
Sure, and I'll just get them to whatever. I'll let them in. We'll see what
No.
happens.
I don't think people are usually required to put their full name in
Right.
the meeting.
Okay, carry on.
Just to let the person who was just let into the meeting, there was some discussion about whether it's appropriate to have a representation for yourself that is not your own image. We have at a previous meeting had an issue with someone, I don't remember what the term is, but kind of Zoom bombing us, if that's could be stated. So there was some discussion about whether that was, you would be let in. We did let you in. We do expect that all members of the public are going to act in an appropriate and civil manner. So I will just put that out there for everyone on Zoom, including the person who has just been admitted. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. So now we will move on to public comment on non-agenda items, 10 minutes. Anyone making a comment can expect a response that falls into one of the following categories: receive an acknowledgement of the comment with no further action planned, receive an immediate response by the board chair or administration. Administration will be directed to contact and respond to the person. Clarification sought from the administration for a specified meeting. The topic would be added to a specified future board agenda. The matter would be referred to an executive session. A public hearing would be held on the matter. Is there anyone who would like to share a public comment on non-agenda items?
Kelly, I just have a question.
Sure.
The agenda, as I read it, had number 3 on the admin report prior to the
Oh, my apologies, Mark.
And we'll just skip fiscal report.
Mark skipped it.
I jumped to the next page and I went right past you. So would you like to do the admin, or are you, are,
I can do a brief admin report.
Okay,
That's
so-
what I was preparing for tonight.
okay.
Brief.
We're going to hold off on the public comment. I didn't hear that there was any large voice that was looking for it. So we're going to suspend that momentarily to correct my error in jumping past the administrative report. And we now give it to Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, so our last board meeting took place essentially during the last week of school. And that's where Paul, Bryn, myself, and Whitney really presented a summary of our work of the school year, which was a nice lead-in to a successful, happy to report, successful school board administrative retreat, full-day retreat that took place yesterday. So I would like to take some time to just publicly thank all of our school board members for your commitment to that retreat yesterday, all of our administrators for their commitment to that work. And it was a really collaborative day, which I think is a great way to start the summer and sets us up for continued a collaborative approach to how we support students, teachers, families, and our greater community. So thank you for that. Other things I would like to highlight would be during that last week of school, we had multiple graduations at our various schools, which are always incredible celebrations of a lot of hard work in a school year. The final graduation of the week was held on the Friday of the 16th, the BUHS graduation. Unfortunately, the weather did not cooperate. So we were indoors in the auditorium, not the auditorium, we were in the gymnasium, but it was still a really lovely ceremony. The students who spoke to their classmates and to the audience were just really impressive, and it was great to see. Other things that occurred during that last week of school year is time for the different staffs at each school to really reflect and celebrate and share stories from the school year of how they kind of persevered, how they achieved goals. So it's always a super busy time of the school year, the busiest, but it's also a time to really, it's really an important time to slow down and just kind of reflect on all that was accomplished and be thinking about, next steps into next school year. But that's where we are. Now we're approaching the summer months, which really for our central office team is really focused on developing agendas for future work with our admin team in terms of fine-tuning our action plan and taking all of that feedback that we received yesterday from a combination of board and administrators. So I know Bryn typed up all those notes and we'll be sharing sometime after the 4th of July. And we'll start looking ahead to putting that work together. So that's it. Pretty brief, but nice to have a celebratory thought on the school year.
You had a question?
I just want to thank you and the administrators for the beginning of many long collaborations, and it was a beautiful setting. It was so thank you.
You're welcome. It was great. Yes, Sean.
And I just have a simple question. When does the budget process, is it started in the summer prior to September, October?
The budget development for
Yeah,
the next
yeah,
fiscal year.
Yeah.
That will start kind of minimally in terms of, we're approaching a year where ESSER funds are going away. So that really will be a focus this summer in terms of how we're thinking about approaching budget season. But as you know as well as anyone, end of September, October, November, we'll really be hitting it hard. But yeah, we're approaching an important year where some of our federal funding.
I'm glad you brought that up about the ESSER funds, because there've been a lot of questions that I've received about that, and what the implications will be for education property tax in the district.
Yes, we'll have to be prepared to speak to that very early in the school year. Yeah.
Does Frank need us to, the finance committee, to meet over the summer with him? Will he find that advantageous?
I don't believe so at this point. I know he will reach out if he feels as though that is needed, but his most recent fiscal report was just a couple of weeks ago, so not much has changed in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, but we do, the finance committee is authorized to do what work that needs to be done, so I'm sure that if anything comes up in terms of HVAC work or whatever, that we'll be having a meeting.
There's lots of summer projects this summer, a lot going on. So.
The orientation packet, we're off to a really great start. Thank you, Deborah, for that. The one piece that I saw lacking is I would love to see a finance calendar so the whole board knows when to begin really scrutinizing the budget, when it's going to be a pain in Frank's side to make changes and all. We need a calendar.
Absolutely. And Frank always puts one together to start the school year, and then I'm sure he will have that ready to go. Yeah.
I have a question that it relates to graduation, and it's something that I sent in an email, and I'm asking it because it has been asked of me of a few parents. I know it was such a hard decision to go inside for graduation, and it limited seats. And I also know that this board made a commitment to represent ourselves at graduation, which is an important part of a student's journey. And this board wants to celebrate and be a part of that, and also make a connection with our community in that way. So I think that in the scramble, because it was a scramble, it seemed like at the end, I do think that we did have a few board members. I don't actually know how many, but some board members attended, and were in the main hall. And I just want a confirmation about, or some information about what is the decision process around who is in the main hall and who is in overflow. Are there teachers in overflow? Are there other lower level administrators in overflow? And when we do move to inside, where's the best place for the board members, participating board members, to be?
Yeah. Well, we had the auditorium open for viewing of the graduation, and we had set section dedicated to board members who wanted to attend on site. Kelly was presenting an award that night. I didn't get there into the actual gym until about 20 after 6, and it was arranged where we had multiple board members sitting there, and it was we just went with it. So it just kind of happened. Yeah.
What is the preference in terms of when there's, but I guess what I'm not under, I think that, I've been to a number of college graduations that are jam-packed, and my sense is that you might have head counts or like fire code things that mean that when you look at it, there's empty seats or there's room to spare, but you have limits on who can be in the space. Is there any way in which there are limits to what our participation would be in that main room when you make that difficult decision to move inside? Would it be better to, unless there is presentation, have board members in the overflow, or is this not something you're concerned about? I can say that a number of parents have come to me being concerned about it. But I also think that there were, feelings were high when you have 6 people who are going to go and you have 2 spots. It's hard. Yeah. So you can look at anything and see fault, but I just wonder if you could speak to that in terms of, in an ideal world, where is the right spot for the board to participate, represent, and view the graduation inside?
So In the gymnasium with the fire code, students were limited to two tickets per kid. That's why we had opened up the auditorium for anyone else who wanted to participate. But it was set up with a section of like class advisors, staff, who worked very closely with that cohort of students in the gymnasium, and then many, many other staff observed from the auditorium.
And so where would you place the board in that ideal?
I thought the plan was the board would be in the auditorium and Kelly would be in the gym. It didn't work out that way, and I think it was fine.
It was fine.
Yeah.
But in the future, that might be something to consider. Yeah, okay.
So I just want to speak to what happened from the perspective of I rode to the school with two other board members, one of them being the vice chair, who I was hoping would be able to be in there, that we could arrange to have the vice chair there as well. And so then there was a fourth board member who came upon, we met this other board member, and so we were walking in, and then the person who is Kathy Venice, who I have to give my, a lot of praise to for all the work that she does and did on this. And two board members actually went to go to the auditorium, but then she indicated that she could fit 3 other seats there. And she pulled them from some of the seats that were there. And she said, if there weren't enough, then board members, would have to stand. But there wasn't any, she didn't bring any additional chairs in there. And it was kind of like happening, and it was in the moment. And then there actually were 2 board members who were in the auditorium. And so I think it was maybe next year we can try to be better planned on this. I do want to speak to my thoughts on board members making a sort of a show of being at graduation. So when I started on a school board, it was in Guilford, and I remember even before I was on the board, I remember as a family member and then as a parent, the board members were there when the 8th graders were graduating. And it felt to me like it was a sign of honoring the students and their families. And we all come to at least 2 meetings a month, and it's taking another night. You're taking another night, and you're committing to this. And so it felt to me like it's honoring. Everyone has their things going on, and sometimes that's not possible. And so I feel like whatever designation or whatever location, I really feel like having board members, some sort of representation there is important, and whatever ends up being appropriate. Tim.
So I was in the auditorium with Kim. I thought it was a really nice graduation. The speeches were great. Everybody seemed happy there. And for me, it's not so much honoring them. It's for us, it's inspiring seeing the fulfillment of all the work that we do. It's for us.
Well, maybe my use of the word honor really seemed backwards. It was to show them that we were honoring them, not with our presence, but that we were willing to take from our time and sort of like show them how important this event was.
Yeah, and
so sorry.
And I doubt that a few board members were taking seats away from family members. There's probably extra seats in the gym.
Sean, did you?
Yeah, I think that when this was first brought up as an idea that the board should attend, it was raised that during a time where everybody had to come inside because of inclement weather, that, as Ruby said, there are only so many seats. And so if I had a choice between family members and board members, I wouldn't have to think twice.
I can say that I did not attend the BOHS graduation, but I did attend the Putney Central School graduation of their 8th grade. I know that Robin attended the Academy School graduation of the 6th grade.
And BAMS.
And BAMS. So I think that I'm just really appreciative that we are thinking along these lines. And I also, as much as I do think that the BOH graduation is the culmination of many of our students' journeys through education, I also I think that I'd like to also commit to attending I happen to be the rep for the Leadership Council of PCS, and that, I also have kids there, but that's a commitment that I'm making to go to. And some people know that I'm a board member, we don't have like a badge. But so I thank you for the conversation. I appreciate getting the perspective, and hopefully next year we can make that commitment again. And like you said, just plan clearly around what the expectations are.
I'm glad you mentioned the other schools, because the thought did occur to me that we do have more schools than just the high school. So maybe next year the board would be able to have a calendar of these other schools, and maybe there would be able to be some sort of representation of the boards in some amount at these other graduations, if that's possible. I think that might be nice.
And that's something that came up as conversation in the Communications Council around kind of what some dreams and visions are of what would make life easier, both for board members, but just for the community in participating in this merged district. It's a good idea.
I think a lot of them happen on the same night, but if we divide and conquer, we can probably get representation at all of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's more of the Brattleboro town that tend to overlap
Okay.
on the same
I mean,
day.
that last week of school, every 6th grader is graduating.
I know.
And there's only 5 days, so some
Right,
are
right.
going to be at the same time. Or not every 6th grader. Some 6th graders are not graduating. They're going to stay there for 2 more years.
Yeah.
There's also some pretty cute step-up ceremonies for kindergarten classes too.
Yep.
Jody has a hand up.
Jody?
I did watch it watch the television part of it from BCTV. And I wanted to ask Mark, I don't think you quite answered the question, Mark, about how many can be in the gym, because it seemed to me that there was quite a bit of room. And I think a few board members wouldn't have overdone that. But is there an exact number? I know there's 2 tickets per kid, but then there's other people like the teachers and the school board and things like that. So do you know the exact number?
Off the top of my head, sitting here right now, Jody, no, I do not know what that exact number is. But I know what was determined to do it in the most fair way possible was 2 tickets per each graduating senior.
Because I do think it's important for the board to be present and seen and not just in the auditorium. And I know, I've had one child graduate. Fortunately, it was outside, so there was plenty of room. I'm hoping for the next one that there will be outside too. But you might want to check to see what the exact, if you had a big basketball game or something, how many people are allowed in. So
There's just it's a little different with a basketball game and a graduation. We don't want to get in a position where some families get 5, some get 3, some get 2. So I think that's where the standard was in terms of evaluating the size of the gymnasium, the number of students graduating, and just trying to provide an equitable 2 tickets per kid.
I wasn't trying to be unequitable. I was just trying to add in the school board members and not give more to certain people.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I think that the tension here is that some people felt that if there's a calculation being made, then we should let in more family members, not more school board members. But what Mark said is really the bottom line of it, that we have enough space for every student to bring 2 family members, and we don't have enough space for every student to bring 3 family members. So there's a little bit of extra room in there, because allowing some people to bring in extra and not other people would create even more discord and upset than the feeling that some people had when they saw that there was board members who didn't have a graduating child but did have a seat and their grandma was in the auditorium or the extra room.
Well, maybe the board next year can have more of a discussion about, and more of a discussion with the administration to try and be more mindful and better planning on it specifically. Okay. Eva?
I just want to ask, how many in total board members attended the graduation?
There were 4 in the gymnasium and there were 2 in the auditorium.
Oh, okay. And this was including the SU and SD?
Well, the one person on the SU who is from Vernon, I've been told watched from home. So it was essentially SD, SU overlap.
So it's, and I'm new, but it does seem to me that a lot of people stayed back and there was a conversation about who should attend and who should stay back. Since 4 people attended. So I just wanted to say that because I don't want it to seem like all the board members attended. It was 4. So
6.
With 6.
I think a little.
I think the number in dispute is the 3 additional in the gymnasium.
Oh, the 3 additional. Okay. Well, okay. So a total of 6 board members that attended.
Yes, in total, yes. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Carrie?
Thank you, Eva, for stating that. Thank you, Kelly, for noting that I was there via Zoom. I think you all should be there. You've done the work. You've put your time in. It's an additional, technically, night you don't need to be there. You should be there. So you should absolutely be there. I don't know how you apportion 4 to 6 to 8 to 10 seats amongst 200 families. Nothing was taken away from students. You did it equitably. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate your time. And I hope you do it again next year. And praying for good weather. I think it's time to move on. No offense.
Thank you.
This is not about students. This is about you showing your respect to them. You're done. Move on.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I think we will move on. If anyone has any other thoughts or concerns or questions, they can certainly feel free to email any member of the board or the administration, and we would be happy to hear your comments. Now, we will move on to public comment on non-agenda items, 10 minutes. I have already read the expectations of what the outcome from any of the public comment. Is there anyone in the Zoom who would like to make a public comment on non-agenda items? I'm going to ask a second time, public comment, non-agenda items. And a third and final time. So we are moving on to new business.
There's an item 5 on the agenda, fiscal report. Is there anything for that, or just don't need to report anything today?
Do I? Okay. So I didn't think, no,
I pulled it up. It's online.
This is
I think there was an amendment to the agenda.
Okay, sorry.
So,
Never mind me.
okay, number 5 was the public comment. So now we are moving on to number 6, new business, the Policy and Amendment Committee. Policies to be presented to the SD Board for a second reading.
So these 3 policies were presented at the last board meeting for a first reading. They are being presented today for a second reading. The first one is F42 Dress Code. The second one is E17 Fire and Emergency Preparedness Drills. And the final one that's being presented this evening is H8, access control and visitor management. Each of these policies is online on the website. The links are on today's agenda. This is being presented for a second reading. We are in a 10-day reading period. And if there is no comment, no suggestion, these three policies will be presented for, in one case, well, perhaps in all three cases, adoption at the next board meeting. Thank you.
Okay, any discussion before we move on? Okay, so I have,
Yeah, sorry. I
yes.
have one more. And actually, Mark might be able to answer this just on the fire and emergency drills. Do we currently notify parents, all parents, of a drill a day before we're having one?
For drills like lockdown drills or shelter in place.
The options-based response? drill?
Yes.
Okay,
Those are notifications provided.
all right, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so we will move on to hires and
Oh, we didn't vote?
not adopting, it's just a second reading.
Sorry.
This is not adoption yet.
Sorry.
That'll be the next one.
Phew.
Sorry,
Okay,
Kelly.
hires and resignations, and I will turn it back to Mark.
Okay, we'll start with one resignation tonight. Kate Haggerty, current UHS Spanish teacher, will be moving on.
I move that we accept with regret the resignation of Kate Haggerty.
Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting with regret the resignation of Kate Haggerty, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, accepted with regret. So now we move on to the sexual abuse investigation.
Do we have any new hires?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was the only one.
No, that's okay. We have 4 new hires this
Oh,
evening. Paige Starkweather, Academy School, 3rd grade position, 1-year contract. Christine Pereira, BAMS academic support teacher, again, 1-year contract. Catherine Burleson, Oak Grove, kindergarten. And Morgan DeRoja, Oak Grove, counselor.
Is there a motion to approve the new hires?
So moved.
So moved. So sorry.
Thank you, Robin. Any discussion?
I have a question. So a 1-year contract, when you mention that versus not saying anything about, so I presume on the one hand, it's a 3-year contract? Or is it with on probation?
It's a 1-year opening. So somebody may have left that position to pursue another position in another school. So
That's a
typically,
1 year.
that's a 1 year, right? So there's typically a trickle-down effect to these. So in both scenarios, it's a 1-year position that was available to be hired.
Okay, not because someone is being hired with question or anything. Okay, thank you.
I have a question, or it might just be a comment, but I'd appreciate, I think that it would be, there's sometimes when the addressee is multiple boards, and I don't understand why. Sometimes the Vernon board is an addressee. And also, I would appreciate it if the principals, or somewhere in each of the pages, that it states what school the position is at more consistently. So that's really just, it's more of a comment that would be something I'd appreciate. I have no object. I think these are great hires and would love to move forward with voting on them.
Okay, all those in favor of the new hires, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, wonderful. We are moving on. Again, to sexual abuse investigation update. I did hear back from the attorney, and she indicated that there was a new report I don't have any information on that, but that has meant that the process to report to the board is going to take just a little bit longer. So we have made the request, and we are still waiting, but it's been delayed a little because of additional information that Attorney Goddard has received. So that's where we are on that. Is there any?
You heard from Kendall?
Yes. And I do believe that I forwarded that to the board.
Oh, okay. Right.
Okay. So is there any comments, questions on that?
Martha Carroll.
Martha Carroll.
Hi. I was wondering if you have an estimate of when we can expect that report to come out and whether or not it will be made public.
I can't tell you timing because, as I said, there was apparently recently there was additional information given to Attorney Goddard. So I know that will cause some amount of delay. What timing? I'm not sure, and I'm not sure what format that will be presented to the public. So, but you can certainly send us an email on, if you have suggestions on something, we would love to hear it. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so now we are moving on to board norms. We did put this off from the last meeting. I don't have my printout with those, but we had, Deborah, do you recall what section they were in the?
You're talking about the last meeting?
Yes, the last meeting. Actually, they'll be on the website.
It was under new business, letter G. And I don't have my printout either with me.
Okay, I'm looking.
You guys want me to email the document to everyone so we can look at it?
Could you read them?
Yes.
Could you read them out?
And could you email it as well? That would be great.
I'll email it for people that are using a computer, and I know
Is there any
you on that call if you want to put it on the.
Sure.
If it was split screen, that would be great.
Sure, I have my sharing settings correct. All right. All right. And Eva's the only board member in Zoom, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and I can also read them. So we have 1, use sensitivity when discussing school matters. Avoid referring to individual staff members or students unless necessary. Engage in respectful and non-judgmental listening. Contribute to an environment where all can feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and feelings. 3, assume positive intentions. We are all here for the WSESD community and students. 4, be accountable for impact. Even when we have very positive intentions, we can still cause harm. When we respond to negative impact, we commit to step 1, acknowledge the harm that has been caused regardless of the intent of individuals' actions. And step 2, seek a path forward that is informed by restorative practices. 5, board discussions should include all voices equally. Share your perspective on an issue when appropriate. Be mindful of leaving space for other voices. Do not dominate the discussion. Do not talk over or interrupt other speakers. 6, be mindful of each other's time. Start meetings on time, keep comments on the topic, and avoid lengthy monologues. Recognize the goal of ending meetings by 9 o'clock. I just made that time up, but I hope that other people agree that is a reasonable time.
Yes.
And 7, shared responsibility. All board members will be included in developing meeting agendas collaboratively. And I also just want to acknowledge that these were based off of the Putney Central School Leadership Council's own meeting norms that they developed. So this is an adaptation of their document that they already had accepted for themselves.
So we can talk about them. We can, if everyone is comfortable with them, we can vote on adopting them this evening, or we can choose to address them at our next meeting, for what the board would like to do. Thoughts, suggestions? Sean?
It might be nice if we had a greater attendance when we discuss this, but I don't know.
Oh, of the members of the public?
No, the board members, because we're missing a couple.
Well, we're missing
Just one.
Oh,
just one.
and-
We're just, yeah.
Our board got smaller.
Yeah.
Oh, true. Yeah.
I think they're terrific. I'm ready to adopt them.
So are you making a motion to adopt?
Oh, okay. I move that we adopt the norms as you just stated.
Is there any discussion? Sean?
Yeah, in number 5, I think that it might be good to have a sentence that refers to Robert's rules. I mean, not saying Robert's rules, but just following, in that there really shouldn't be cross-traffic conversations, that things should be addressed to the chair only, and then the chair can invite somebody else to speak, which is sort of what Robert's rules is. So if you have cross-table or cross-room conversations, it's outside of Robert's rules.
So let me just ask a clarifying question. So are you suggesting that the language be reworded in some way, or are you just asking us to be mindful of Robert's rules?
Or just add a sentence about Robert's rules.
So you're asking to add a sentence about Robert's rules?
Yes,
Deborah?
Madam Chair.
Did you vote?
I do have a question about that, because I think we are in the process, as we go through our meetings, we adapt Robert's rules to our needs. We are following Robert's rules for small boards, and we are becoming more and more familiar with that. I did say, I think at some point, I did reach out to the V.S.A. for a cheat sheet on Robert's rules for small boards. They do not have one. So with regard to the point that was just made by the board director from Guilford, in keeping with Robert's rules, we're not consistent even on that point. We do speak directly with each other. We speak informally with each other. And for the most part, that works. If we are going to make that notation regarding how we acknowledge voices in a board meeting, I think that opens up a lot of other issues having to do with Robert's rules that might be connected here. I'm not sure I feel very comfortable with that addition. It seems very formal and very different from the way we currently do business.
I know Ruby had her hand up. I'm just going to ask one question of Sean. If your feeling is that you need to see the words Robert's rules, or if there could be some mention of decorum of some sort in there, would that be sufficient to address your concern?
Well, thank you. I think that Robin had an idea of adding a sentence. So since she created a lot of this, and I think it's very well done, it might be if
Are you wanting to say something like, avoid crosstalk, wait to be recognized by the chair, or something like that? Is that what you wanted to add to it?
Is that what you are proposing to add to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, maybe Robin can come up with a proposed sentence or reconfiguration, and and Ruby, you had your hand up, so we want to make sure you have.
So the 2 points I'd make are that I do hope that we do get a cheat sheet or make our own cheat sheet for Robert's Rules for Small Boards. Mm-hmm. They exist in the world. Mm-hmm. But my understanding of Robert's Rules for Small Boards is really that there's a degree of informality that is kind of encompassed in it. So the formality of Robert's Rules is lessened, and that's what we've kind of been doing. And but I do think the board has authority to, if the room is breaking down, you can bring it back to, okay, everybody needs to, be acknowledged by me before you speak. So that I think is just to me, that's a truism. That is what Robert's Rules for Small Boards says. And then the second is that the meeting norm, these are meeting norms, but they're not inclusive of all meeting procedures. So the procedural aspects of what we do can be encapsulated in policy, in other documents. These norms, as Putney Central School Leadership Council has used them, we actually refer to them, and we have a graphic that's kind of pretty and can go up, that we look at and review at the start of every meeting in the same way, kind of when Kelly reads the kind of verbatim thing that she has to read, you review it, and it's a touchstone, and it's a reminder, not just to the board members, but to the participants, community participants as well, because these are board norms, but this is the board norms for this board space. And so that's what all participants would expect. I don't think I'd have objection to, I agree with Deborah. I'm not sure that a reference of Robert's Rules in here is the appropriate thing, but I don't think I'd object to whatever language that Robin's crafting.
Can I make another comment? Sure. With number 5, the last sentence, I think, says it, and I think we need to be true to the words on the page. And it says, do not talk over or interrupt other speakers. Mm-hmm. And I think that is one of the key issues that we're very careful about, so that even as we talk together, when someone interrupts, there's a moment of, oh, whoops, were you finished? Kind of deal, that kind of consideration. So I do think that last sentence addresses the issue we're talking about.
Tim.
As long as we're talking about norms, quite often I send out suggestions for workshops for board members to avail of the JurassicParliament.com workshops, for not just for clerks, but for chairs, for regular members. I think if everybody tried these workshops out, they'd see how flexible Roberts can be. The board can adapt them to whatever we want. And it would help with decorum, and it would just help us procedurally. So once again, I urge people to avail of JurassicParliament.com. The district will pay for the minimum fee for these workshops.
May I? Yes. Just as an addendum to what Tim just said, Jurassic Park is very, very cool.
Jurassic Parliament.
I'm sorry.
Jurassic Park
is very cool.
There it is, Jurassic Parliament. And she tends to have little dinosaurs on her shelf, Jurassic Park, there we go. It's very cool. It's another perspective from the training Zoom sessions that we receive from the V.S.A. It's got a different tone to it. And again, the district pays the fee. Mm-hmm. It's a nominal fee.
Okay. So I'm happy to add avoid crosstalk, wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking. I do want to acknowledge that when I asked Sean if that's what he wanted me to say, I was doing the opposite of what was recommended. And this is the type of stuff that I accidentally mess up all the time. I'm Jewish, I'm from a culture of overlapping speech, and I have to be really thinking about what I'm doing to not just jump in to say something because I thought of it. So to me, I kind of appreciate breaking that down into all these little micro steps of not speaking when it's not your turn. So if other people are okay with this, I will add the following sentence. Avoid crosstalk, semicolon, wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking. Does that seem okay with folks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then does that feel like it's complete, what our intentions are?
Did you mention not using names? That's not in there, is it?
That's number one. I mean, it's not using names, but I think that's what you're talking about.
We use names all the time.
I think,
Unless necessary. It is unless necessary, so. Ruby.
sorry.
Ruby.
I wanted to actually raise a question about number one, which is use sensitivity when discussing school matters, and the one word or sentence is avoid referring to individual staff members or students unless necessary.
Oh.
I think the spirit of that norm is to be mindful of not disparaging an individual who is not in the room or who is across from you, but particularly someone who's not in the room. And so I feel like I don't have language for it, but I feel like that sentence, the bulleted norm makes sense. The sentence could get at that nuance better, and I haven't tooled language for that, but I think that it's not avoid saying names or avoid referring, unless necessary for sure, but it's also don't disparage people.
I just want to say how I got there. In the PCS one, it said something about like, let's keep student matters confidential within this space. Now, obviously, that is not needed to be said because it's illegal for us to discuss student matters in this space. We would be an executive if we were discussing a student matter and an individual person. We wouldn't even be talking about them. But I was like, well, how does that translate to things that we do talk about? And I was thinking about when we are, for instance, like looking at expenses and talking about like, oh, so-and-so went on a trip and no one was, not necessarily that no one here would have an intention to disparage a student or a staff member, but sometimes just calling attention to an individual person when they weren't expecting it can feel very uncomfortable. So that's what I was trying to capture, that sort of thing where we just have to think a little bit about like, how shall we discuss this and keep it on a more global level and not on an individual level. When someone's giving a presentation, we're obviously going to be like, thank you for telling us about your school, and talk to the person by name. That's not what I was trying to refer to.
So it's interesting because something as direct as number one, and I see it as very direct and very clear, I'm hearing different interpretations of number one because I had a different interpretation. So I would suggest that just to piggyback off something that Ruby just said, and whatever I might say about another human being, I would say in person to them, and I would also say the same thing if they were not present in the space, because I'm not going to say anything that's disparaging, right? Whether they're in the space or not. And my language will be very careful. I read number one as saying, respect privacy. Respect privacy, which is on the order of respect confidentiality. Do not, because if we get too specific with this, it's going to be very edgy. So, Dummerston School made a presentation about their leadership group with the middle school. So here I am sitting here. Well, I might refer to the presentation that principal made and refer to that principal by name. That's in keeping with the spirit of the work that we do. That's not the problem here. So again, overwriting it makes it very legalese. And we have delayed this process of approving meeting norms we've done this, we did this in numerous workshops last summer, and we get very nervous about approving a statement like this. This is not cast in stone. Everything is, a feel-good motion like going to BUH graduation has come under refinement again and again and again. So here we are. I really would suggest that we approve these norms, knowing that we can return to them in the future to fine tune it if necessary. And maybe the word draft should stay at the top, just as a moment for all of us to recognize that this is this document is only as good as we need it to be. So I think we should approve this and see how it works for us and then reevaluate it.
Robin?
I'll just admit, I didn't know how to end that sentence. So I just was like, unless necessary, for lack of a better word. But I do agree with Deborah that we can always adjust this later. And I think it's good if we vote on it tonight, how it is. And if someone thinks of a better way to capture the intention of that one, we can always later on be like, hey, let's update our document.
Ruby, did I see you had your hand?
I do. I agree that I would love to approve these tonight. I do think that the allowing ourselves to consider that first one and what our intentions are a good idea. And my recollection about the spirit of this particular norm, how I see it, is it has to do with confidentiality around when you disagree with someone. So if you had an argument or you don't like something and you come to the meeting and you're like, well, they're wrong. That's what you want to have not occur. And so, but that being said, I think this is a starting point. And I would just say, to speak to something that Deborah suggested, I think rather than put draft at the top, I think somehow, putting somewhere rather than draft, acknowledging that it's a living document, to me, that feels more appropriate. Draft means it's not been approved to me. And a living document is something that we can adjust and change. So that's my only thought around that suggestion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And so one thing that you could say is WSESD board meeting evergreen norms.
Evergreen?
Evergreen means, yeah, we shouldn't be having this conversation.
Does it mean subject to change? Is that what you mean? That's what it means, subject
Well,
to
I've heard,
Evergreen? Did you say evergreen? Just clarification. Okay, just making sure.
Yep.
What if we just add a sentence to the end that says, this is a living document, board members can adjust these norms as needed?
The board.
The board.
I put board members. I guess the board. Yeah,
Right.
that's better. The board.
So I just need to clarify, there was a change to number 5. Is the feeling that if they're approved this evening, that it is with that change? I just want
Add, avoid crosstalk.
the change that Sean had.
Are we voting on, I can't remember, did we vote on?
There was a motion to approve them.
We did.
But it was, okay, so then I guess, Sean, are you asking for a motion to amend the norms?
if it wouldn't matter, I think Robin, since Robin was the one that did it, that she could make a friendly amendment.
That's, yeah. I'm happy to make the amendment to change to add these 2 sentences. 1 to number 5, avoid crosstalk, wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking, and to add to the end, this is a living document, the board can adjust these norms as needed. So I guess we can vote on those 2 changes first and then vote on accepting the whole thing.
Okay, so Robin has essentially made a motion to amend the meeting norms to number 5, the end of number 5, and also the end of the document. All those in favor of the amendments to the meeting norms, please signify by saying aye.
I
I
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, so we now have that it is now amended. Is there any further discussion on the meeting norms with the amendments in place? Okay, so all those in favor of approving the meeting norms with those amendments, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
We have adopted them. Thank you.
Okay, go team. May I ask a question? Will these be posted on the website or a public document, or is this an internal document? I noticed that they're not shared. I'm not quite sure why they're not shared in Zoom World unless I'm wrong, but.
I almost thought under the agenda that it was probably the previous version was listed under the agenda, so we could probably include them in the minutes.
Actually, I was going to say, this is not just talking about this norms, but in general, I feel like whenever there is documents that we're considering during the meeting, whether it's a slideshow from somebody's presentation or a document that we're discussing, we should just always have them posted on the website as a separate thing that members of the public can click on. And that would also make the minutes shorter.
Okay.
So in the agenda, you mean?
Or just on the web page where the agendas are. Sometimes they post underneath the meeting, however.
Could we have them posted under the minutes if there are documents that come out of the?
That's been the standard.
Okay, so these would be, it's possible to post these new approved norms under the minutes when they're posted. Okay,
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay.
By the by, the norms were not included as a link in the agenda document.
Okay, so I must, maybe I saw the previous agenda. Okay.
It was a previous one.
Okay, thank you for that.
Point of information.
Sure.
I am getting the screen share on the Zoom recording, so we'll be on the BCTV recording. And I believe they are getting it in Zoom, just on Paul's screen for some reason.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for that clarification. Great.
I'd like to just raise this as an issue that we should consider at a future meeting, and that is how the website is being used. And I don't know that we solve the problem by posting something like meeting norms as a link or as an attachment to whether it's the agenda or the minutes. You then have to search through these documents to find the related document. And that is a bit unwieldy and not quite user-friendly, as against having a site on the website with documents. I'm sorry?
I'm violating our norms.
No, that's okay. I'm violating our norms by saying, help me out, Robin. Add what you want to add. I'm a New Yorker.
I believe there is a page called Documents.
WSESD documents.
Okay, and is it there? Do we upgrade that? Do we keep that up to date?
Currently, election results, March 7, 2023, all the budget and capital plan documents, board meeting presentations.
Okay.
Not as up to date, school calendars,
Okay.
23, 24 calendar.
It might be.
Presentations from 2022 though, so I think a lot of things could be added.
So that is clearly a site that we might consider.
May I speak to that? I did, it was a few months ago at this point, but I was in central office and talking to Mo about this particular issue because that page is very useful to some extent, but it's all in reverse chronological order. So in like 5 years, you're going to have to scroll down and scroll down and scroll down to get the Articles of Agreement and anything that happened way back. So I think that it's worth, considering what's for the long term, what would be the most useful structure, both for this board, but also for the community members to access information. I'm not sure that what we have now is correct, but I'm also not sure that it's some work for for a board meeting. But I appreciate, and I have had the same issue.
So I see Nancy's hand has been up for a while.
I'm going to let Robin and then Nancy just
then Paul.
momentarily. Robin.
I was just gonna say, we can make a conversation agenda about that on the Communications Council, about how to best make accessible our documents on the website, where and in what order we can put it.
Nancy.
I was just wondering if wherever you put them, you could just add a link to your meeting header that says meeting norms, that automatically, if you click on the link, it takes you to the meeting norms so that people could easily access them no matter where they're listed.
So can I just clarify that, Nancy? Are you suggesting that the link to meeting norms should be, let's say, on every agenda, just as a matter of form?
Yeah, just part of your header, like where you put the Zoom stuff and all of that. If you just include it in there, then anybody who needs to refer to the norms can just click the link.
I would just suggest that perhaps we move on.
Okay, yes. We are ready to move on to the summer schedule. We talked about that at the last meeting, and the question was whether we wanted to meet on July 11th, which would be the regular meeting day, evening, as the second Tuesday of the month, or if we would be waiting until July 25th. I can say that I have had further communication from the Brattleboro Select Board that they will, confirmation that they will not be meeting until July 25th. And in a previous communication, it was suggested that we do the same thing for the consultation for the board vacancy, and have a call meeting for a short amount of time on that day. So I'm not sure. So that's actually two sort of points, but.
Can I ask for clarity about something you just said?
Yes.
So are you saying that they have a select board meeting on the 25th, and we could warn like a mini meeting there and go there to have?
So what we did last time was we warned a meeting, they warned a meeting, and we appeared in Zoom to them, and they appeared in Zoom to us at the same time. And so we were able to have the consultation requirement with them. I don't believe that I've heard from central office about anyone having submitted a letter of intent or a letter of interest. So the deadline has passed on that, so we might have to re-advertise. So, but we would essentially, just so that they could, they would know in advance the names and have the information that the letter of intent, and then they would just consult. Last time they just said whoever it is that you feel, and that was, it's a requirement, but it's not, we then take that consultation and then make the decision.
But is it during their board meeting?
It's during their board meeting and also during ours.
And it's, sorry to interrupt.
But for 1 second, but our normal board meeting is on the 27th or
25th.
It's on the 25th.
It is the same evening.
That's what I was going to say.
That. Sorry.
So the two questions here are I mean, there's really, the question is whether this board wants to meet on the 11th. And last year we did not, in part because the administration was taking some much needed time off and just giving everyone a break, and with vacations, different times, and I know in some years the board hasn't met at all in July. So, Tim.
Question: When is the admin retreat?
August 7th.
Okay. The reason I ask is yesterday's retreat was very rich with a lot of innovative ideas and all. And I would hope that before a calendar and goals are set, that following the admin retreat, that the board again discuss those. But if it's not until August, that doesn't affect July, although we do have a lot of work to do. But I think we can take one meeting off.
Kim?
I think it's fair to take a meeting off. I think, having just come on, I've not put in as much work, but I know the people that are on the board have had a very tough year, all year, and I think it's fine to take a meeting off, and it gives time to the administration as well, to enjoy some time off and not worry about coming and preparing for a meeting and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with taking 1 week off.
Okay. Tim?
I would note that policy and amendments
is meeting on the 11th.
Is meeting that day.
On the 11th, but that's our headache.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and I think,
and that is also a planning meeting, more so than going through policies, but trying to work out a plan for the year. That's what
the only other thing is if we have a finance, if we were going to have a finance meeting, which we could still have, but if we wanted to change that to the end of the month and just do it the second meeting.
So I'm going to I think Robin had her hand up and then Sean.
I don't have anything to say.
Okay. Sean?
I think we'd have the finance meeting at any time. It doesn't have to follow in a schedule because it's summer. And we have authorization from the board to meet, so I don't think that's an issue. And I would sort of agree that, in school, recesses are important, timeout is important, reflection. So I think it would be really courteous to the staff and the administrators not to have an additional meeting.
Okay, does someone, Ruby?
I don't object to not having a meeting on July 11th. I think we as a board would need to prepare. This is probably this meeting itself is the best chance of actually ending close to time since we started. And so I think we should prepare ourselves for having a little bit of a backlog of work. And so whether it's being diligent on the agenda or postponing some conversations for later meetings, whatever it is, I think that we should just prepare for that.
I will just one moment, and I will say that to that, if there's maybe as we look at some things that we might bring to the meeting, maybe we might evaluate things and see if there's something that we can do through email or through other communications and resolve things, and then if we bring what is absolutely necessary in that sort of regard. Deborah?
So I appreciate the sentiment about time off, but what I've experienced on the board is even when we do take time off, something intervenes always, and suddenly it's not time off. So I just want to throw that out. I am very concerned about the backlog of issues that we haven't gotten to. One is what was delayed from the last meeting, and that's letter H, climate survey report. I really, as a board member, well, that's what I am, I really would like to resolve the proposal coming from Chris Overtree. I think that is long overdue. It's a written report. His work, at least in the moment, is finished, but for this written report. And he's actually waiting to hear from us about the direction we want that report to take. And we know from yesterday, I think it was Junie Maynard who said the writing is tied to a subjective point of view, always. We may call it objective, but it's always coming from some perspective. We haven't gotten to that, and I actually have a folder of unresolved board issues. I just keep shoving things in there. Maybe I haven't looked at it in a long time, because we can't seem to get to them. Anyway, I'm very concerned about how this board is coming across professionally in terms of resolving the climate survey report. I want to get that done. It can stay on hold. We held it over, but we did ask for some preliminary work from Chris Overtree with the last board meeting in mind, and now it's still on hold.
Yes, Tim.
My initial understanding was that a small group would meet with Chris and approve the parameters that had already been discussed in a full board meeting.
So am I interrupting?
No. So I thought, do we really need to meet as a full board to discuss the parameters that have already been discussed?
My understanding, the way we left it the last time we discussed this as a board, as a full board, is that we would come back to the full board and present what the options are for the full board to make a decision.
Okay.
But we haven't even gotten to that point with the full board to even bring the options to the full board. That work hasn't been done yet. So anyway, I throw that out. It can wait until the 25th. We will have a lot to do on the 25th, without doubt. I'm just concerned. A question about the 25th. We're going to have candidates coming forward to present their statements, their points of view on the 25th. Candidates who are looking to fill the board vacancy. Is that correct? They're going to do it on the 25th.
I mean, the deadline was the 23rd, and I think Mark is confirming that we have not had any indication of anyone who is interested in filling the role. So,
Okay.
Do some more outreach.
okay, yeah,
So whoever that person is or persons coming forward on the 25th, on that same day, we as a board hear from them. And on that same day, is the select board also listening to their statements? Or is the board just making a recommendation?
what I would presume to do is the same as what I did last time, which was to share the letters of intent with all the board members and then with the select board. And so they would have them in advance. They need to, and then they, in their meeting, they discuss and discuss with us what their suggestion, what their, their consultation as to recommendations, and then the board says thank you for the recommendation, and they then go and continue their meeting, and then we go and continue our meeting, which includes making the choice.
Making a choice, voting, going into executive session. Right, thank you. Okay.
Any other thoughts on?
On behalf of administrators, I think it would be greatly appreciated to take a meeting off in July.
And I would just piggyback on that I think what Deborah's raising is really critically important, particularly about the climate, but also the overflow of things we could do and haven't done. But the climate thing, the Chris Overtree thing, I think really does require Mark at a minimum to be in the room. And I thought there was not a question about having administration not be present. Like, I think giving administration a pass on the July 11th makes sense. I thought the question was about the board and not requiring Mark necessarily or other administrators to be there, but maybe I misunderstood. But I think we've heard loud and clear that as a matter of course, that early July meeting, they would very much appreciate off, and I would feel sad if we had to pull them in, and I think we would have to for the Chris Overtree conversation.
The way I was presenting it is I was asking if the board wanted to not meet on the 11th, which of course would mean that the administration wouldn't, but
Got it.
Robin.
I think there's just a majority of things that we talk about that would benefit from administrators being present. So I don't feel like that there's a lot of work we should do on our own without the administrators. I mean, I think if we tried to write an agenda, we might find that we would all be like, oh, well, we should wait till, they're here to talk about that. So anyway, so I think it's just as fine if we just give everybody the week off.
Okay, so if there is no more discussion, is there a motion to postpone our next board meeting until the 25th of July?
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah. And we just had a vigorous discussion. Is there any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor of postponing our next meeting until the 25th of July, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. And I think, so sort of on, hopefully this addresses at least in part some of what Deborah's concern is, and other board members have expressed. So last year, Mark created a calendar. This year, he presented to us a draft calendar yesterday. And I think I know Carrie in Vernon and the SU board, she has done or been a part of creating a calendar, a 2-year calendar for that board. And so it might be helpful for this board to look at if there are predictables to try and create that calendar for this board. And hopefully that might help to address some of the things that our board members are thinking need to get resolved, and may make things a little more organized. And Ruby.
And this relates to summer schedule. There is a planned board retreat, or in August, there's an intention to have a board retreat.
Yes.
And it feels like that work would be a good space for that work. I don't know to what extent, I don't know in a timing, when the train's already left the station with his planning, would that be a curveball? But I definitely think that there are ways in which the board reviewing what are the things we want to hear, that we need to do that work. And hopefully it won't be a huge surprise. And, Mark can be part of the conversation or not, but ultimately I think the board retreat might be a good time to discuss that more kind of global calendar and the predictables.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Liz?
Let's see, I don't know if the information was relayed to Mark and the board, but EES would like the opportunity to present some of their work, and it's not included on any calendar. So maybe, I don't know, Mark could contact Deb and see what she had in mind for that. Because all the board gets, they get, like I'm sure Ruby does, send you minutes of the meetings, but our schools are all giving presentations, and while EES is fairly separated from the school system, they are part of this district. And for the board to not have anything from them, just it isn't sitting right with the EES Policy Council. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I think Ruby's going to speak to the calendar that we may have gotten yesterday.
Right. So the calendar that was used last year by Mark and administrators Deb did come in November, and I think her expectation is that she will have an opportunity again, and so at the policy council meeting, the EES policy council meeting, I think there was some reference to and discussion about like what if that presentation could have the look and feel and of some of the recent ones here. I wasn't a board member then, and I don't know if she appeared in person or via Zoom. appearing via Zoom it doesn't have the same look and feel. So I think her hope is possibly to bring in some of her some of her staff in the same way that we've seen with other presentations. So my assumption has been that this newer calendar, the draft calendar, will include Deb and EES.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Deb was an active participant at our retreat just yesterday. So.
Yep.
Thank you, Liz, for bringing that up, and we will make sure that is taken care of. Okay, so I did touch on the board vacancy. We will hopefully have some some candidates for the 25th of July.
Kelly, can you verify do we have an August board retreat on the books?
Deborah and I are working on it.
Okay, because August is like one of those months.
We just spoke about it this evening, just before the meeting, we were talking about, yes, so, yes, thank you for your being mindful and, yes, and keeping us on task. Okay.
And we will enlist your assistance.
Oh,
in planning this.
I love assistance.
So don't go away.
I do.
Thank you.
A question on the board retreat, is that going to be something that's held at night or at day? Because
That was part of our discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was better, I think we will probably be asking Ruby to send out a doodle poll and trying to get availabilities, including, I think probably evenings has in the past has been helpful. So I think we are mindful of people do have full-time jobs, so we are mindful of that. Yeah.
Their vacation schedule's already set up and.
And days already accounted
Yes.
for.
Thank you for that reminder.
The other thing that I think we should consider is the venue where we want to hold the board retreat. I want to be mindful of expenses, very mindful, and distance traveled. We don't want people spending time in cars to get to a venue. But there is something to be said for being off-site and not where we always do our work. It changes the energy in the space. I just want to add that to it. I don't know what we can do. It may be that we're here.
Robin?
I would like to suggest that we do it in one of our school buildings, which will be free and not here. So that will meet both of the concerns that you just expressed, Deborah. I think in when I remember going to the ones we had for the Brat Town Board, we did in the EES building, but there's a lot of good buildings. That one has there's a room with like comfy chairs and stuff.
But there's air conditioning.
Right. So, I'm sure that we can find a space, because the one with all the administrators was such a larger number of people that there's probably different considerations. But if we're just talking mainly about like us 10 and Mark, and I don't know who else would be coming to that, I think we can find any number of spaces within our district properties.
Okay, good. I also think I would recommend that we, if there's food involved, there's an Afghan caterer that is connected to families in the district, and that they are a great caterer, so that we don't burden anything if particularly we're in a district building, that there's no pressure felt at all.
Can I ask what the objective of the retreat is?
Well, I had been considering the board norms. We've already addressed that. I think one of the big things is the calendar, trying to figure out what it is that we want to, what are our goals? What do we want to get done this year? That
A little. Can I give a little feedback?
Sure.
Okay. And maybe on our 725, that might be an opportunity to talk a bit about that, which happens right before the admin retreat. But a good portion of the admin retreat is taking the feedback that we received collectively yesterday. And I think there's a lot of common feedback from all of us. And it's to begin to put in place the calendar in a draft form, where essentially when we come back from the retreat at a next board meeting, it would be presented. Here's what we're thinking based off of the feedback. Because the other thing to take into consideration when we're planning the calendar, we're also planning lots of other people's time. So doing that collaboratively at our retreat is super helpful because we essentially have all the players there and we can think about, different timeframes in the year. So just wanted to share that.
So I appreciate what you're saying. I would hope that, I know that the board, in whatever it conceives of as a calendar, will look to superimpose the admin calendar on the board calendar. There are more people involved on the admin side, and that is what we are about. Meaning, let me just finish, please. Filtering to ultimately the students. I think there is something to be said for the board sitting with its own set of issues, trying to figure out what those issues are, apart from administration, aside from taking a look at the admin proposed calendar and figuring out what some of the issues are that the board conceives of. We as a board need to talk about goal setting and we need to talk about self-evaluation. We have not done that yet. It's been on hold from the policy committee. I think it's either B1 and B2 or B2 and B3, but it's the Bs, early numbers. We need to do that. And that is work that the board needs to do for the board's purposes. Admin does not need to be there for that. I think there's discussion that the board needs to have on its own.
Sure. Yeah, and I think once we get to a final product for the calendar for 23-24, I think it's really important that we frame it as it's our collective calendar.
Oh, yes.
It's not a board calendar and then an admin calendar. We're in this together to serve one purpose, our children, our community. So it's got to be a combined stamp of approval.
Robin?
It sounds like what I'm hearing is that it would be really useful for us to already have that calendar that is going to be developed by the administrators when we have our retreat. So maybe, did you say it was going to be on August 7th?
7th, 8th, and 9th, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So maybe when we're creating the doodle poll, we could just pick dates after August 9th.
Mm-hmm. What I was hearing actually was more if the board was going to be expressing expectations that that Mark be informed before that admin retreat. And I was
thinking on the 25th, there could be an opportunity to hear highlight the ones we really are interested in, our top priorities. So that would help us.
I think how I envision the work of the board in this, and this kind of speaks to the work that the Policy and Amendment Committee have been doing. The policies that we set are a huge part of how we govern. We do the work of governance, and some of those policies ask for a certain amount of monitoring or reporting, and some of them I think are reflected in the calendar that Mark's been working off of and the admin have been working off of to give presentations. But I think there may be some that aren't because they're not as hot button or they're not as relevant to a certain department, so that wants to make a presentation. So it could be that at the 25th, the July 25th meeting, because I've talked a little bit to Deborah, I know Tim and David had done some work to look through and kind of pick out what policies do require that level of reporting. If we pick that work up again and discuss that on the meeting on the 25th, that might be informative for Mark to bring back to his admin retreat so that they're not blindsided by something. And then I think this goes to your initial question. In my mind, then the board retreat is around are we getting the presentations and the reporting that we want? Is there some way in which we'd appreciate something different. That being said, like, let's just be all clear. The presentations from the administration staff have been like, they're knocking it out of the park. They're doing great job at presenting. Those presentations don't always equal the kind of reporting that the policies envision. You know, it's not, you know, the slideshows and the discussions and the commentary is really informative and important, but there's policy reporting that, you know, might have a different flavor that we might want to discuss. And I don't know that, I think that's the type of work that would be better at a board retreat than in a meeting. That's in my opinion.
Anyone else on this topic? Okay, so we will move along to the E, Policy and Amendment Committee, policies to be presented for first reading. A policy.
Yeah, it's H7, Leadership Councils. It's being presented for a first reading, 10 days. I really encourage everyone to take a look at this policy. It is awash in beautiful colors, from black and white, the classic, to blues, to yellows, to reds. Pay attention to the crossouts, because suddenly in the middle of a crossout, there'll be one word that's pivotal, that's being retained. So it is a significant rewrite of the policy as it exists on the website. I as chair of the Policy and Amendment Committee, I speak for everyone on the committee. We really are very proud of this document, and we are ready to hear from everyone, comments. So please write to us. Tim, I'm going to call on Tim.
No, just for the public to know that the policy that what they voted on in the articles are not changed. We cannot change those. So they're still there.
This is in adherence with Article 15. And in fact, thank you, Tim, on the last page, pages 3 and 4 are the articles of Article 15. They're all enumerated here. So, and that's what is in yellow on the second and third pages of this. Please send us feedback. Thank you. And this will come up, obviously, for a second reading on July 25. So that's what we're presenting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah. So we will move on to Leadership Council updates. Do we have any updates on?
I was going to I just want to highlight in this section that the EES Policy Council did meet and are very interested, as Liz spoke, in engaging and kind of having a better understanding both from the board and from the district with how EES exists in our greater district. And so that I just want to call out that came up.
I know from the BAMS Leadership Council and just speaking with other people from other boards, the question and concern about how their questions are being answered, and how that's not being done. You know, we ask them to submit questions, and we're not addressing them. So we need to come up with a way how we're going to do that if we're asking them to submit questions.
Robin?
I don't want to sound critical. I'm just wondering, why did we ask them to submit questions? I mean, obviously, if they have questions, we want to answer them, but it seems like the direction was received as like, think of some questions you know, like when you're in a job interview and they're like, do you have any questions? And like, if you don't ask any questions, you look kind of bad. So it's like people try to come up with questions, but like, do we need them to ask us questions? What are we trying to do? Sean?
Well, I could speak to the Guilford Leadership Council. They have always had questions, and they felt as if there's no way to have a backstop. It never comes back. So they were pleased to have at least a slot, a line where they could ask questions. You know, they may not get the answers, but at least they get to ask them. So it's, yeah.
To me, I don't feel like putting them on a line in the administrative report is the right place for questions. Mm-hmm. I feel like if we want there to be a dialogue between the leadership councils and the board, then we should speak it aloud at the meetings. And so I'm not sure that is accomplishing this.
Okay, Ruby? I think, you know, I was not on the board when I attended an orientation of leadership at each of the leadership councils. And this was discussed, and, you know, this was a recommendation or a thought that came up that then was implemented by Mark. One of the concerns was that there are so many schools, and there are questions, some have different levels of urgency, and not space. At the time, there was no space for discussion in leadership councils anymore. You know, like there used to be a long time ago, and then all of a sudden there was you would have to bravely like raise your hand and feel dismissed. That was the sentiment. And so I think this was an attempt to create space without putting a burden in the board meetings, both on the board creating space for it, but also the burden of being brave and raising your hand and rocking the boat from a huge agenda. That being said, I do remember Mark saying in that meeting that let's start here, see if it works, and reevaluate. Like if it's not working, then maybe it is time. But I actually think that it's Mark's, you know, it's Mark's role in terms of how he works with the chairs. So perhaps we as the board could ask Mark to, you know, poll the chairs or figure out if there are suggestions or ideas or thoughts. How's it working? It's been a few months. How's it working? That's a thought.
I mean, I feel like at the leadership councils I have attended, which is mostly academy and sometimes bands, that it doesn't feel like people are feeling satisfied by this structure. But I think that, like, so we have leadership council updates are now like back on the structure of the agenda again, which they were a few years ago, and then they weren't on for a while, now they're on again. So to me, this is the natural place where we, as representatives at these leadership councils, can bring up out loud in the group together, here was the questions that the people had, talk about it in the meeting, and then that representative can send an email to their leadership council and say, here was the answer that happened at the meeting, or they can just tell them at the next one. But I know why those weren't on the agenda for a long time is because the meetings were too long. And that was one of the things they were trying to be like, let's make our meetings too short. So now we're back to like, our meetings are too long again. Mm-hmm. So I would just really encourage all of the board members and administrators to kind of think about this quandary in between now and our July 25th meeting and see if we can come up with a good structure that allows for some discussion space, but doesn't make all of our meetings excessively long.
Well, I think that's the difficulty. How do we have the discussion space without making our meetings overly long? I'm looking at the 3 questions right now, or rather there are 4, the 4th one being questions for the board. So the first one is 1 to 3 things we celebrate, appreciate about our school this month. I think a lot of this is that connection that the individual schools do not feel to the board, and looking to address that. And certainly Leadership Council, Article 15 establishes or looks to establish communication, two-way, and we're struggling with that. I want to go back, when this first was proposed to the board, that these 4 questions would be possibilities for the various leadership councils to respond. The fact that it's at the end of an administrative school report, I find cumbersome. I would, again, the website and reorganization so that data is easily available to us. Again, I would love a document that pulls together every school's report and just list it by school, but not so that I have to scroll through a report and go from school to school to school. I think if we could reorganize it and see it a little differently, it might help us as a board. I don't think we need to go through every school's leadership council comments, but it would be nice for the entire board to see what every school is coming up with.
Sean?
Yeah, every leadership council is required to make minutes. So they have, if you go to the website, you can see every minute posted. And I know in Guilford, they do a lot of work that really doesn't have anything to do with this board specifically. And they're quite happy just to plan things at the school, get the admin report, notify the parents that are there on what's happening. So in a way, they're a separate entity. They don't need our blessing. They're doing the work. And, if they have questions, they should have a venue to be answered. But they're autonomous, that's whatever the word is, entities, which I think is really important because that keeps the character of every school, which is so important. They're not under the thumb of this board. They're their own leadership council in their own school, and let them have it.
Robin?
I just wanted to say, the other thing that I think is sometimes a concern that is expressed, whether it's in these spreadsheet things or just in the meetings, is that people, besides doing the sort of school-based work that Sean's talking about, really want to be engaged in decision-making when the board is making a decision that affects their particular school. And so I think that is something we could also talk about maybe at our retreat, of how, especially as we're thinking about calendar planning, how can we be more intentional about creating time to consult or invite feedback from the leadership councils in our own decision process.
Excuse me, sorry, cough.
I just wanted to harken back to something that Sean said, because I think that Sean and I probably agree on what a leadership council is and what it does, but it is a subcommittee of the board. So it is autonomous. They're not, we're not controlling them, but they are a subcommittee of our board. And so that's, or at least that's how I perceive them. And so to that end, I just wanted to put that clarity out there. I also wanted to just mention that I appreciated at the last PCS Leadership Council meeting, and I wish I had it printed out and ready for the EES Policy Council meeting. There was some minutes last month that Robin put some bullets, or put a little summary, kind of an executive summary at the top. And that was really critically important for me. It helped me to then create my own bullets of that I could tell them about. And I think that the PCS Leadership Council appreciated it. And so I guess I see my role as the board representative as it's a two-way street, and I'm the conduit of that. And so I'm giving them information, and I'm hearing what they say, and then I'm bringing it back. And sometimes that there might not be any question. And so I tend to agree that I'm not sure that where it is placed right now at the bottom of the admin reports is the right way. I'd rather find a way that we can see what's being reflected at all the leadership councils, because that's the community voice, and seeing trends amongst them is really valuable. But I like that there's opportunities for them to not, for leadership councils to say, here's what we focused on, here's what we talked about. I like that. I don't mind going through 10 different tabs and searching for that, but I do think there might be a better way. But I did appreciate Robin's work. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to do that on the last one.
Well, I would just reiterate that the meeting minutes are available for every leadership council meeting, and they're all according to site. Very easy just to click and open them and see what people are doing. And that would be a way for the board to, be involved with the leadership council, because we're gaining the knowledge of what the leadership council is accomplishing.
Okay. Well, so maybe we can think between now and the next meeting, we can try to come up with some ways that it might be easier, more effective. And if people out in Zoom land, people in the leadership councils have any suggestions, please let us know what your suggestions might be. Okay. So, board subcommittee updates, did we, Robin?
I would like to nominate Tim to join the Social Justice Committee.
You are available for that?
Yeah, I would accept that nomination with pride.
Okay. So all those in favor of adding Tim to the Social Justice Committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, wonderful. Well, the last thing we have on the agenda is.
May I just?
Oh, sure.
So I just want to announce and let the board know that the Programmatic and Performance Equity Committee will be meeting on tomorrow. And I'm hopefully going to get out of this meeting and go to social media to try to let the public know, because one of our questions is around community engagement and how can we hear community voices around what they see and think about around programmatic and performance equity.
Okay. Thank you for that, Ruby. I am looking in the binder that Deborah spent so much time preparing for our board orientation yesterday. So I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that and thank her again for that. And so the last thing on the agenda is one executive session. It does cover three parts of the statute, and it is a continued grievance-related executive session that, so I'm going to ask, is there a motion to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage, with the expectation that another motion will be made to go into executive session under 1 V.S.A. 313A1D grievances other than tax grievances, 1 V.S.A. 313A1A contracts, and 1 V.S.A. 313A1B labor relations agreements with employees. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah. All those in favor of making that finding, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. So is there a motion to go into executive session under 1 V.S.A. 313A1D grievances other than tax grievances, 1 V.S.A. 313A1A contracts, and 1 V.S.A. 313A1B labor relations agreements with employees?
So moved.
Thank you, Pam.
Is action expected?
Public action is not expected, no. So all those in favor of going into executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. We are in executive session at 8:01.